Assalamualaikum, everyone. Welcome. It's so good to have you at the Building Bridges event, sharing stories with Shias and Sunnis. And first thing first, I'm going to invite one of our storytellers, Muhammad Murtada, to please start us off with Surah Al-Fatiha.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين صدق الله العلي العظيم. And now for the English translation. With the name of Allah, the All-Merciful, the Very Merciful. Praise belongs to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds, the All-Merciful, the Very Merciful, the Master of the Day of Judgment. You alone we worship, and from you alone we seek help. Guide us in the straight path, the path of those on whom you have bestowed your grace, not of those who have incurred your wrath, nor of those who have gone astray.
This is a question for everybody to answer in the chat. What is your favorite form of worship? Maybe it's salam, maybe it's dhikr. So go ahead and share in the chat, what is your favorite form of worship? Let's see, tasbih, yes, for Aleem. Fasting, oh my goodness, yes, that's one of my favorite times of the year. And you can fast anytime, of course, but Ramadan fasting, the best. Awesome, Mahi. Welcome, Haneen, bachelor's in poli-sci, woohoo. And favorite form of worship is making dua. Oh yes, what could be better than just connecting with Allah in a way that really works for you? So keep those coming in, but I'm gonna keep moving as well, just so you know what's on the horizon and we make the most of our time. And the first thing I want to acknowledge is, yes, the most important is that we're all Muslims. I know for me, it is my most salient, most precious identity, and I can't imagine life without that identity. And at the same time, within our Muslim Ummah, there is such diversity and richness that we want to be able to acknowledge it and appreciate the different tribes that are there within our Muslim Ummah. And so with that in mind, we wanted to create intentional space to acknowledge our Shias and our Sunnis and all the different schools of thoughts and subgroups that fall within those two categories. And so in the registration, we asked you if you identify as Shia and Sunni. We'll probably ask you again later. And the intention is just to really see you and start to explore what it means to you to be Shia and what it means to you to be Sunni or however else you identify. So today's event is not an intellectual exchange. It's not about learning about each other's history or different perspectives or traditions or theologies. It's really a heart-to-heart connection to make space and hear what are our experiences as Muslims and how do our sectarian traditions inform our identities, influence our expression and the way we go about, be it in our worship or in other ways as well, right? So that's the intention. The other intention that I want to name off the top is that we want to lean into the differences. Yes, we are one ummah. Yes, it's all about the things that we share. And there is so much richness and beauty and complexity and challenges too that are there in our differences. And so we don't want to shy away from them. We want to lean into them so we can be with one another, get to know one another in sincere ways. So with all of that being said, what I would like to do now is get an even better sense of who's in the room with us right now by doing a poll activity. So in a moment, you're gonna see a thing just pop up on your screen. You don't have to go anywhere like that. Ooh, so just do it. Just go ahead, enter in the poll how you identify. And in a moment, we'll have a chance to discuss some of the responses, and then we'll move on to the stories as well. Yes, yes, good. I'm seeing things coming in. Woohoo, welcome, welcome. 5 more seconds. If you haven't already, just select your answer. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so here's who's in the room with us today. We have 9 Shias, 69%. Woohoo, welcome, welcome. We have some Sunnis, 23%. Woohoo, welcome, welcome. And we have some, we don't have a smiley Shia folks yet, and some folks who don't identify with either. So if you said other, please in the chat, just feel free to enter how you do identify or what feels good to you. All right, so that's who we have in terms of how you identify. Can we have the next question, Nabiha? All right. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how important is your sectarian identity? Very important. 5, 1, not at all. 4, 3, 2, it's somewhere in the middle, right? So take a moment. You can interpret this question however you like. All right. So perfect. So we have some folks for whom it is very important. For some folks, a little less than very important, but still important. For someone, it's not that important at all, but for the most part, it means something to you, right? Being Muslim is important, and yet your sectarian identity says something to you. So another thing I'm going to say right now is I want us all to be curious today. And so feel free to say in the chat why it feels important to you, or why you chose number 5 or 4 or 3 or 1 even, right? So the chat is a way we can continue to engage with one another as we move forward. So question number 3, on a scale of 1 to 5, how often do you intentionally engage with others not in your sect? So if you are Sunni, how often do you intentionally, like by going to each other's mosques, having friends, listening to scholars from the different sects, intentionally engage with others not in your sect? Alrighty, so these are our results for how often do you intentionally engage with others not in your sect. It is, all right, so it's a little bit more spread out, right? So we saw previously that our sectarian identity is important to more people than not, but we are less likely to interact with people of the different sects. Okay, so interesting. Let's keep it going. We have 2 more, and then I'm going to also invite Brother Aleem and Brother Ayaz to share any reflections, along with introducing our 2 organizing organizations that are sponsoring this event. All right, can we have the next question, please? On a scale of 1 to 5, in your day-to-day interactions or discussion, how is the other sect referenced? So be honest, brave space. We want to do this work. Is it always negative, like, oh, those people, da, da, da? Or is it always positive, oh, mashallah, right? Or is it somewhere in the middle of those 2? All right, so these are results. So there are some, this is also all over the spectrum, but the highest is for number on the 4 level. So not always positive, but I'll take that as mostly positive, right? So, okay, so that's encouraging. That's good. Let's go on to our last poll. Okay, on a scale of 1 to 5 in the media or social media that you consume, how is the other sect referenced? So it might be on Instagram or Facebook or articles or videos that you consume. How is it there? Okay, perfect. So I think you guys can see this one too. This one, okay, that's good. There's 0 for always negative. Somewhere in the middle. So it's not always positive. So we definitely have work to do in the media aspect. All right. So I think that's good for the poll. And before we move on to our storytellers, thank you for engaging in the poll and helping us get a better sense of where we have work to do and where we're at. And so now I want to turn it over to Ayaz to do 2 things. One, just introduce us to the Shia Muslim Council, and then also to share any reflections that you might have from the poll that we just did.
Thank you, Sister Tasneem. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Ayaz. I am the treasurer for the Shia Muslim Council. And to give a brief introduction to the organization, the Shia Muslim Council of Southern California is an independent umbrella organization comprising of various Shia Muslim centers, mosques, and organizations in Southern California. The primary objective of SMC is to provide a platform to facilitate the exchange of ideas and experiences to enhance and support religious, social, humanitarian, and educational development initiatives, and to cooperate with like-minded organizations such as IslamiCity to advance unity amongst Muslims and across interfaith groups, which is why I think this event is so very important. And given the data that we saw in the polls right now, it's so amazing to see the diversity in thought and the diversity in how each of us are represented to each other. And I think it's a really good starting point to helping us progress forward. And I'm really excited for this event and inshallah, any future events with IslamiCity.
Brother Aleem.
Thank you, Tasneem. So, assalamu alaikum, everyone. On behalf of IslamiCity, I'd like to welcome all of you to this webinar. I am the co-founder and CEO of Hadi, the organization that runs IslamiCity since 1995. I won't say much about IslamiCity. You can just visit the website, of course, and see everything that we're doing at islamicity.org or even islam.org. We registered the URL islam.org back in 95 when the web first started. It has been an honor to be working with the Shia Muslim Council of Southern California. We have found a partner where we can leverage our shared passion in building a better community, which is based on love, compassion, and understanding. And we really need to blur the lines of these divisions that we often find ourselves in. I won't go into detail about why it is important to do these events. I'm sure all of you know why it is so important to do this event. This is a pilot webinar based on the feedback of our speakers, all of the participants here. We hope to chart a course where we can do more future events, inshallah, and really be a model for other communities and other countries even, where we can come together and share our differences and our common faith that we have. We really hope that we can build on this pilot that we're doing. And a very big thank you to Tasneem, who has done all of the legwork in preparing for this. Ayaz, Mehdi, and Brother Khalil, also from the Shia Muslim Council, and Nabiha for all of their efforts in the background. You see some of them, and we've been meeting for several weeks that has culminated to this webinar today. And of course, thank you to Muhammad, Adib, Ariba, and Ehsan for leading us in these reflections, and to everyone who is joining us today. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
So without further ado, I know you are eager to hear from our storytellers. I'm eager to hear from them. So I want to turn it over to them ASAP. Just a few reminders and important invitations to help us hold space so we can really listen and lean in ways that are effective and helpful. So first and foremost is a reminder that our speakers, when they're sharing their stories, only represent themselves. They're sharing their personal experiences, perspectives, questions, struggles, and they don't represent the entire Sunni community or the Shia community or their families or their mosques or anyone else but themselves. So keep that in mind because we need to have space and appreciation for our individual experiences. Second and most important is an invitation for all of us to lead with vulnerability and courage. So our storytellers are already being vulnerable and courageous by saying yes to sharing their personal experiences in public like this. It's not easy. I don't know about them, but whenever I do something like this, and I've done it quite a bit, and still my heart gets all thumpy, and then I'm like, oh no, I hope I don't say anything that offends somebody. Like there are all these thoughts that go through your head, and they're still doing it. So thank you to all our four our storytellers for being courageous and vulnerable. How can you be courageous and vulnerable? Well, you can be courageous by listening to them. As they share their stories, what resonates with you? What surprises you? What even challenges you or rubs you the wrong way or in a, I don't know about that, right? Look for that. And looking for that is an act of vulnerability and courage. So instead of reacting to each other and our stories, I'm going to invite all of us to be just curious with our own processes and thoughts as they emerge. And so, and the final reminder is that, again, this is not the space for historical, theological, legal kind of discussions or learnings. Those are very, very important. Inshallah, we'll make more space for those. But tonight is a heart-to-heart connection. So if you do have questions come up that are more related to things outside of the stories, just make sure you send them to any of our panelists. We'll make note of it and we'll find ways to address it. And once the storytellers are done with sharing their stories, there will be space for some discussion and reflections there as well. So without further ado, if you have any questions right now based on what I said, feel free to enter that in the chat and I'll respond to you via chat. But otherwise, I'm ready to dig in. Are you ready? Say yes in the chat, say Alhamdulillah, Subhanallah, whatever you feel like. And I'm going to invite our first storyteller, Adib Hamwi, to the floor. Adib is a student at UC Riverside, a junior, and he is a philosophy major. So Adib, take it away.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. My name is Adib Hamwi. You guys already know that she said it, but alhamdulillah. Okay, I'll get right into it. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. So my story starts off as like any other, person, like a young Muslim in America, like just that. And that alone already comes with its struggles. It already comes with its toughness, like in America is not a majority Muslim country. And like being someone who was born here, but like raised, like in the country, like Syria, coming back, like fitting in was just, it was tough. It was really hard. But like, at least for me, I had my, my Saturday school. I had at that time in my youth, my Muslim community. So for me, it was like, okay, even though I'm like vulnerable in this world, I know people who share that same struggle as I do. You know, we're all Muslims in America, Muslim youth in America. So I felt that there. And it wasn't until I was exposed to certain things in life that really like altered my perception of like reality, kind of like the way I look at life. And one of those things was especially social media. You know, social media has its good, it does have its good, but it also has its bad. And you know, being a young Muslim, like 12, 14, whatever, on social media, you're really exposed to a lot of things. And one of the things that I was exposed to was like seeing a group of Muslims call another group of Muslims just, you know, crazy things. Like you know, just being someone who'd even know certain words, I would see people calling people kafir, calling people this. And for me, I was like, what does this word even mean? And like, why? Why are Muslims calling other Muslims this? For me, as a youth, it did not make sense to me. Like, it didn't make sense. And from that, it shocked me. Like, even though there were things that I didn't want to, like, I knew just wasn't right, just as a child, subconsciously, like it makes rational sense in your head. And that's the thing about, you know, social media, is that you get lost in it. So I was just hearing things like, you know, they hit themselves, they talk bad about, you know, like the Sahaba. And for me, it's just like, what does this mean? Like, why? And this leads to questions like this, makes me like, this made me then question Islam. Like, if Islam is true, if this is the Muslim community that I'm relying upon, then why is there this, you know, why are there two different sects? Why is this? And there's an aspect to it. It's like, it sucks questioning Islam without a teacher, without proper guidance. Being just this kid, I had all these questions flood my head from just one side, really, with no guidance. Really, it makes you feel lost. It makes you feel empty. And all this goes back to like not addressing the problem. And it wasn't until college, until I was in the MSA with Muhammad here. Inshallah, you'll see him talk soon. And it was on the day of Ashura last year, and I had posted on our MSA page like this infographic that's like, you know, fast and do this. And I thought I wasn't doing anything wrong until Muhammad sent it to me. And in the most beautiful kindness way, really tells me like, this is not what we stand for. Like, this is not what we believe at all. And right away, oh my God, I felt so bad. Like, one, just like, I just felt so ashamed that I didn't know the other side. Like, why did no one tell me this? Why was my Muslim community not informing me? Like, something so tragic, and not even just knowing the other side. Like, Islam is about pursuing knowledge, and not knowing that I felt so ashamed. Right away, I took the post down. Muhammad sent me videos and links, and he told me so much. Like, really, subhanAllah, he changed my life. Like, he really changed my life for the better, and I can't thank him enough for that. And you know, since then, like, you know, like this past year, this past month, in fact, we posted infographics that was really encompassing of both sides, really showing the struggle and showing the remembrance of Imam Hussein, like why it's important and why we should be addressing these things. Like, Islam is about justice, and it's about confronting this more beauty aspect of pursuing truth. And how has that changed? It literally changed like the way I learned. I've learned so much. And just the fact that I was able to recognize in the moment Muhammad was telling me about these things, I was like, this is the moment that I was afraid of in my life. And I'm going to take this moment, I'm going to learn. I'm going to have that open heart. I'm going to have that open mind. And subhanAllah, like, that really floods in like this whole opportunity and aspect of life that sometimes you just don't recognize. You don't recognize these beauties. And alhamdulillah, like I'm proud to say I have like many Shia friends that I would have not had before. I was just, every time I was like hearing someone was Shia, I was like, oh, okay. But because, you know, I never addressed it, but now alhamdulillah, like literally I'm meeting neighbors that are, you know, Shia, and we're like the best of friends. Like, how beautiful is that? And yeah, that's my story. Really having that open heart, that open mind really changes your life for the better. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you so much, Adib, for sharing so openly your journey of questioning, and the challenge of questioning when there is no guidance on how to dig into those differences. And finally, how to transform shame into an opening, into more possibilities, deeper connections, all of that. So thank you so much. Before we move on to our next speaker, Ehsan Varnos, I'm going to invite everyone to just take a deep breath. This is the moment for our attendees to get vulnerable and courageous and enter in the chat something that you really appreciated about Adib's story, something you appreciated or something that just resonated with you. Yeah, how honest he was. Take that in, Adib. We're really appreciating. Great example of leadership with an open mind and heart. Yeah, your willingness to learn, mashallah. Positionality. Yeah, that the one path of Islam is a way to be able to come together even with our differences and work through it. Open to change. Awesome. All right, so keep those coming in. We want to keep showing our love to Adib, but we're going to move over to Ehsan and give him just as much love. Ehsan is a student at UC Santa Barbara. He's an economics major, a sophomore. Let's give a little extra love to Ehsan because he became a college student in the pandemic. So you know that has its own challenges, but inshallah, it's gonna be smooth sailing ahead for you, Ehsan. So take it away.
Thank you so much, Tasneem. First off, I want to say Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and for hearing us out. So I'm gonna get right into it. You know, in all my years of high school, I really didn't expect to get along with certain types of people, you know, like the normal crowd, with athletes and, you know, the gamers. And, you know, as minorities, we mostly keep to ourselves, knowing how underrepresented we are. And, you know, we have preconceived notions about other groups, other ethnicities, other faiths. And, you know, they're kind of embedded in us by media, mostly social media, sometimes our family, sometimes our friends. And, you know, although I always found so many things in common with people I went to class with outside of our backgrounds, for once in high school, in my junior year, for once our commonality was faith. You know, when I first found out that I had Muslims around me, I was so excited. You know, even if it was just one or two, we would finally be able to pray together, practice together. The opportunities would be endless. But at the same time, I wasn't sifting through Sunnis and Shias. You know, rarely would I ever ask a friend what their background even was. And I would just present myself as a Muslim, no need to include my denomination. And, you know, all of a sudden, when conversations switched to more of a religious aspect, we realized we might have more differences than we expected. Suddenly we question each other's praying styles and why we might pray on a piece of earth, or why we might mention Imam Hussein's name instead of Allah. And it just created this feeling inside of me, being pulled towards two sides. At one side, you know, I was loving my brothers and my friends, but at the same time, I didn't want to attack them, you know, although, you know, what they might say is not practiced by my belief. I really didn't feel like creating an argument. So I felt discouraged to share my tradition, and I felt like it'd be torn down. It wouldn't be accepted. You know, this fear of already being underrepresented allowed some false narratives to seep into our minds. And so I dove deeper into conversations with my Sunday school teachers in an effort to be knowledgeable enough to defend what we believe in. And after hearing, you know, countless Quran verses, traditions, and reasons behind our practices, I realized that no matter what I could present to them, our narrative may never be true in each other's eyes, you know. But it was only through fasting during the month of Ramadan, which we built this foundation. And surely more of our practices aligned than disaligned. and coming together without worrying of what might be wrong about each other's practices allowed us to connect as brothers. And I really took this opportunity to find and build connections. Anything they said, I'd connect to my own tradition and practices, and we realized that we're the same. And even though, you know, we could attend each other's prayers at the same time, I felt a little separated. You know, I knew that we can't see a change in our practices, but can we see a change in our hearts? You know, open up to different perspectives without judgment or dismissal? Or, you know, did they really see the pain that I felt for Imam Hussein, see my reason for all those things which I described to them? Perhaps in the back of their minds, they still think of me as a disbeliever and disregard everything I had to say. But it was only through love and appreciation which brought us together. You know, at first I was afraid to bring out my identity, when now I'm so proud of it. You know, I might have seen myself as an outsider, and those feelings of, you know, hatred and anger and being afraid will stay with me forever. But I've learned that we can build friendships and not feel this hatred or suspicion for one another. You know, now that I'm more of a defender of my faith versus simply a representative of it, I feel like this is more of a beneficial thing for the ummah. Getting over this anger, learning not to disregard a group simply because they disregard me or what I stand for. Everyone is welcome in Allah's home. And we're all connected to Allah, and inshallah, He'll see our intentions. But are we intending to use someone's faith as a way to hate them, or are we intending to understand each other? You know, all these events which occurred between me and my friends allowed me to understand that at a time which Islamophobia runs so rampant, it's not okay for someone like me to feel discouraged. We have to be true to ourselves and practice being Muslims. Allah says in the Quran, chapter 3, verse 103, and hold firmly to the rope of Allah altogether and do not become divided. And remember the favor of Allah upon you when you were enemies and He brought your hearts together and you became by His favor brothers. Knowing this lies true between sectarianism, we should always unite with love over hatred, dissecting the narrative in a way which allows us to grow and together as one ummah versus divided over differences. Hate and division has defined us from the start, but now no more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ihsan. Taking a deep breath, invite everyone to share what they appreciated, what resonated as Ihsan was sharing. For me, I was really touched by your journey of being discouraged and that struggle of how to show up, how to represent, how to be, how to practice the way you know. And then to be on this side where there's just this pride, this sense of connection, this sense of love, to be yourself while embracing others, giving them that space to be themselves as well. And yes, 200%, especially in the time of rising Islamophobia, it's not okay for any of us to be discouraged and have any reason to not feel comfortable inside our own ummah with our own brothers and sisters. So you're getting a lot of love from our attendees. Thank you. How you pushed to form connections with the other side despite the fear of being respected. Yes, I can see some folks are resonating with you. I have a feeling that's because they share your experiences, truly came from your heart. So thank you for being so sincere to your own story and journey. All right, so taking a deep breath. We'll move on to our next storyteller, Ariba Khan. Ariba Khan is joining us all the way from the East Coast. Well, not the East Coast, but the East Coast?
Yeah, East Coast.
Okay, cool. She's a student at the University of Delaware, international relations student on the law track. So woohoo, watch out. And she's a senior and inshallah, just getting started. So go for it, Ariba.
Well, assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, Tasneem and Brother Aleem and the fellow panelists and the Shia Southern Muslim Council for organizing this event. I'm so thankful and honored to be here, alhamdulillah. So bismillah, let's get started. So tonight I'm going to be talking about like two stories and they're like intertwined, inshallah. So bismillah. So my first experience with even coming into contact with the Shia community was actually when I was a little girl. It was during Ramadan at the masjid. And as you know, so it was around iftar time. And so I was, you know, a young girl, I think it was like around 10 years old. And it was around iftar time, and we were all sitting outside of the masjid. We had our plates of, you know, dates and watermelon and samosas. And as the azan, the call to prayer goes off, me and my immediate friends and a majority of the people at the masjid, we all break our fast, right? I am a Sunni, and so in our like we break our fast at the second that you hear the adhan. And so, you know me, like fasted all day. The second I hear that call go off, I'm stuffing my face as fast as I can. And so as I'm eating, I look to my nearby and there's a girl who's not eating. And she hasn't opened her fast or she just wasn't eating. And so, you know, I'm just like, oh, why aren't you eating? Like, and all she said was like, oh, no, not yet. And when you're young, you don't really pry. It's just, it's rude. And you don't ask people too many questions, but I was just wondering, like, why aren't you eating? And so I just left it at that. And so it wasn't until years later, because I grew up in a mainly Sunni community, I hadn't really come into contact with Shias. And so it was years later until I learned that the Shia, they actually wait a few minutes longer to break their fast. And so this past year, I had the honor in interning at MPAC, the Muslim Public Affairs Council. And during my internship at MPAC, I was working with the two fellow interns, Ramin and Preston, who are Shia. At my internship in just the first few weeks, I was appointed as a policy and digital, and I was appointed to work on this group called Unity Group that the SNEAM was actually a part of. And so the purpose of Unity Group was to bring together Shia and Sunni groups together and to bridge the gap and combat stereotypes. And, you know, so I'm here like, well, I don't know anything about the Shia community and what they believe. So Ramin and Preston, I had become good friends with them. And so I was like, hey guys, like, I don't know anything. Can you please tell me about what you believe, what the similarities are, what the differences? And alhamdulillah, like they were super kind. You know, I was embarrassed. I was really embarrassed. I was nervous because in the Sunni community, like you hear things, stereotypes that are like negative, and these are really dangerous, and we need to be careful. And after, you know, working with them so closely and learning about it, it's really painful to know about the discrimination that Shias face. And I think that it's my responsibility now, inshallah, like moving forward, that when I hear some negative comment, it's my job to educate those around me. And so I can imagine how awkward that little girl must have felt. Like, yeah, we were kids. I didn't know better. I didn't know, you know. So, you know, alhamdulillah, I'm really thankful for the work that I've done at MPAC and Tasneem. And inshallah, I hope that we can all carry this message moving forward and doing our best to educate ourselves. So thank you.
Taking a deep breath, inviting folks to enter in the chat what you appreciated, what resonated with you from Ariba's story. For me, Ariba, it was just this, I think the story for me was about going from innocence and hesitation to be curious, to really becoming responsible, saying, hey, these folks are in my community too. Let me learn. Let me ask the questions I didn't ask before. And that journey and your sense of I'm committed now to bringing them into the fold and committed to education. That's super powerful. Thank you. Feel free to share more love with Ariba, with some already. A lot to learn from each other, how much we're the same. Yes, open heart and minds, realization of our obligation. We all have the same obligation. Yes. Yeah. So some folks are sharing their personal experiences. Thank you for being courageous. Yay, you took on my invitation, Dr. Shahid. So appreciating you sharing your experiences of being Black and Muslim and how to, but growing up as Shia, I grow to know myself more and appreciate many different schools of thoughts. Lovely. All right, so taking another deep breath. We'll move on to our final storyteller for the evening, Muhammad Murtada. I just met him, but I have a feeling I'll be meeting him a lot more moving forward. He's a student at Cal Poly Pomona, political science major, and he's a junior. So Muhammad, take it away.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So to really begin this story, I have to kind of tell you a little bit about my background, and that's me coming from a very religious family. So I come from a family of religious scholars, and because of that, I was always in contact with my Sunni brothers and sisters from a really young age, whether that was shadowing my dad around to different events, interfaith iftar events, MPAC events, care events, whatever it was. I was always in contact with them, and I knew very minimal about what they believed, but not really a lot. I knew that we had some differences. For example, we prayed differently. Our adhan timing was definitely for iftar, for example, but I didn't know too much until one day there was a Quran school that opened up about 7 minutes from my house. And it was a Sunni school, and my parents were really happy to send me there because as us Shias, we don't really have a very huge emphasis on Quran, and we kind of emphasize more on dua and those things. So there really isn't a lot of Shia Quran memorization schools. So my parents were really happy to send me to a Quran memorization school. And this was when I was about 13 to 14 years old. But to me, I was terrified because as a 13 to 14-year-old, the only thing I wanted to do was blend in. Like the last thing on my mind was to be a sore thumb and to stick out in a group that I had never been in before. And growing up as a minority already as a Muslim in America, I kind of just coasted through middle school, not really having my head pop up anymore because I was the one kid that was the minority. And now I saw this continuing into my high school years. But I remember we had this one sheikh who taught us Quran, and this sheikh was the most intimidating man on the planet. I mean, he was 6'4", big beard, name it, he had it. And I was terrified of him, even though I later learned to meet him, and he was a really nice guy. But in the beginning, when I first met him, I was this 13-year-old Shia kid, and I was terrified. But I remember every single day after Quran class, he would take about 15 minutes to tell us a story about one of the Sahaba or an important part of Islamic history. And this time he decided to talk about Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib and the Battle of Khaybar. And I remember sitting there as this little kid who felt like I was alone at the school, and just having the sheikh who at first terrified me talk to me about something that was very near and dear to me really made me happy, because it made me understand that there were similarities between us and that there were common points where we can connect. And honestly, that flourished into me having many, many Sunni friends. I mean, my best friends, Adib sitting right there, they're all Sunnis, and I love hanging out with them. Because at the end of the day, it made me realize that no matter what we believe or what we preach, at the end of the day, we all say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. That there's no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is the last and final messenger. And that's the only thing that matters to us. Because as long as we have those two and we hold true to those two, then we are holding true to our faith, and there is no reason for us not to be connected. And a little second short story that I kind of want to share before I end was, I remember it was about the third week after I started attending that school, and I started going there full time for high school. And one of the guys in the grade above me came up to me And he was like, hey, Muhammad, everybody here is open about what they are. Everybody, they say they're Hanbali, they're Hanafi, they're Shafi'i, they're Maliki, but I've never really heard you say anything. What sect are you from? And, again, trying to keep my head down, I was like, guess. So he goes, no. Hanbali, no. Maliki, no. Shafi'i, no. And then he kind of looks at me and he goes, Salafi? And I'm like, no, dude, I'm Shia. And he went, oh, okay. And it was weird because that wasn't exactly acceptance, but it made me feel really good because he didn't freak out. I told him I was Shia and he was like, okay, like that's cool. And that's kind of what I went with. And that's kind of how it is nowadays, because we both have our different beliefs and they might not understand why I do what I do on Ashura, but they respect it because they understand that it's important to me. They understand where I'm coming from. And alhamdulillah, I have been able to share it with my Sunni friends what happens on Ashura, the reason we fast differently in a month. For example, with Adib, I was able to share that, and it was a really happy moment between us and a really precious moment between us. And they'll understand it. And I feel like that's the most important part, is just to have that feeling of understanding and that feeling of communication. And whether or not I agree with you, I respect you because you are a human being and you are my brother in Islam, whether you're Shia, Sunni, or whatever it is. Because at the end of the day, as long as we have that respect, it becomes very easy to cooperate with each other and to understand each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. Taking a deep breath. And feel free to enter in the chat what you really appreciated about Muhammad's story, what resonated with you in his story. I think for me, what was most powerful is how simple and powerful acknowledgement is. Like just the mention of Hazrat Ali, Imam Ali in a Sunni mosque can help you feel comfortable and welcome. Like, yeah, I also belong here. And even if it's not like a full-on acceptance, okay, kind of the head nod that you got from your friend, at least, okay, we're getting there, but we have work to do. Thank you for that. So yeah, let's just take another moment of silence as you enter things in the chat that you appreciated about Muhammad's story or what resonated with you. We're gonna move into our just a few debriefs, and I'm gonna invite actually our storytellers to all come on the same screen with me and to share your reflections of what was it like for you to tell your story? Did it feel vulnerable or courageous to you? And two, what did you get from hearing each other's stories? So one question is just, how was it for you to tell your story? And the next question is, how was it for you to hear each other's stories? And the questions for my attendees is to, again, share any questions that you have. We probably won't get time to answer them, but your questions are super duper important because it will inform what we do next and we'll find ways to answer them. So, all right, whoever feels ready, take a deep breath and please share your own reflection.
So I guess I'll go. But personally, I felt at first I was a little embarrassed to be sharing my story. It was like, Ariba, you're 7 years old. You should have known better. But it's like, I was 7 years old. How was I supposed to know that, the girl next to me isn't breaking her fast because she's Shia? Like, how was I supposed to know? And then someone could be like, well, you should have known. It's like, I was a kid, like, please. So alhamdulillah, I hope no one's mad at me for sharing that story. I really liked Muhammad's story about his school experience, because I also am learning about how a Shia student growing up in America was like, and I did not know about his experience. So I'm really intrigued to hear about the Quran aspect as well.
Thank you, Ariba. Yeah.
I'll go next. So to start off, I was really empowered, honestly, because I know that we all go through, a very similar experience. how minor or major it is, and just to share that and put that out there, and knowing that it's going to resonate and maybe even, you know, create a reverberation across the ummah is very powerful to me, you know, that people can maybe put this into their hearts and make an effort to unite. But I also really appreciated Ariba's story, because I had a very similar incident with one of my friends where we were on the phone with each other. I heard the azan and he was like, all right, brother, I'm going to eat. Goodbye. I'm like, wait, I'm going to eat in like 10 minutes. He's like, and we were super confused. And even then I didn't understand. So it just goes back to, you know, how much we have to learn still, you know, about our own differences, but it's just so important to have those experiences too.
Can I add, Buadeep? I see you ready, but I can't resist. I'm sorry. I've had that experience as well, but I think for me, related to it was my experience actually going to a Shia mosque for an iftar. I'm sorry, Khalil uncle, I don't remember the name of the mosque. Please put that in the chat. But I was so blown away because it was when I went there, you know, the person who invited me, she said, oh, you know, please go ahead, open your fast. And I was like, no, it's okay. I'll wait. I'll do it with you. You know, I wanted to experience things with them. And so I said that, and she was like, okay. But they just kept praying and making duas. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. This is so different. And what I really was in awe of was how that moment, like me, I think Ariba said this, a sense of stuffing your face is what happens when it's time for me to open my fast. And when I was there, it was a moment of, okay, this is a time of gratitude. This is a time of stillness. This is a time of connecting with Allah. And it really helped me to see that iftar in a different way. And since then, I have to say, I still eat as soon as I hear the adhan. But you know, it reminds me to be still and to remember what really matters. So thank you, Hassan and Ariba. Adib, go for it.
I just wanted to share, like, this is so beautiful. Like, honestly, you know, like me as a Sunni, it's like I never acknowledge like there are other sides. Like other people have felt the way I did. And for me, it was because I kind of suppressed all this for years, like not asking or not even acknowledging that side, like knowing that people have their own story, they have their own experience about this very thing. It made me feel not alone. You know, the emptiness really, like, now isn't empty. And like that's like the best thing I can ask for. And something that really resonated with me was like what Ahsan was saying. He said, I wrote it down. He was like, intending to use someone's faith to hate them or to understand and love them. And like, subhanAllah, like that's really true. Like even in the intra-faith aspect, it's like you're going to use that knowledge of someone else to do what? Like, and as Muslims, like, why not use it to be brothers and to have that bondhood and that community? Again, like Muhammad said, La ilaha illallah wa Muhammad Rasulullah, like there are things that we have in common, and we can use that to nurture love, to give hope. You know, like we have similarities, and there are things that can be fixed if we work together. So yeah, jazakallah khair for everybody for their beautiful reflections and speech.
Thank you, Adib.
I think one of the most important things I took away from this is I feel like 14-year-old me would have loved this conversation, because it would have made it easier to understand that you're not the only one that's trying to figure this out there. And I feel like that's the greatest thing that's going to come out of this conversation, is the fact that other Muslims are going to watch this and they're going to understand that you're not alone out there, because this is a struggle that every single Muslim goes through, whether you're Sunni, Shia, whatever it is, you go through this, trying to understand your faith and navigate your faith with your friend's faith, you know? So I feel like that's the most important thing I took out of every single person's story, is that they showed us kind of how they did it. So that you're like, okay, maybe I'll go about it this way. You know, this worked for Hassan, this worked for Adib, this worked for Ariba. Let's see which one works, you know?
I love it. I love it that even though we all have so many common things that ground us and guide us, like the practices and the rituals, we each still have our own unique journey and our own way of getting there, wherever there is. Awesome. Adib, if I may, a clarifying question for me. You said something about being empty or feeling empty. Would you clarify what you meant by that?
So when I first gave this, like the emptiness was like residing because I didn't have a guidance. I didn't have, you know, anybody to show me the way to answer these questions, you know, because I was scared. I was, you know, these are things that I just like as a child. And it's like now those very same concepts and questions are coming back, but now I have the people to give me that knowledge. I have the people to guide me. That's why like I really appreciate Muhammad as a friend in my life, because I use it. He really made me like basically answered my dua back then of the emptiness. I got that filled in. So, you know, now like that basically the emptiness is like a lack of knowledge. You know, subhanAllah, like just saying that how knowledge is really important to, you know, both of us, Sunnis and Shias, really empowered me to, you know, to ask questions and to not be scared of what the answers may be. Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So I have a question for you. And again, if others have questions, please share them in the chat. This might just be a coincidence, but I have a feeling it's not. But either way, I found it interesting that both Adib and Ariba shared this sense of asking question and their gratitude for being able to ask the questions, right? And Adib just mentioned having that guidance and someone you can go to and how important that is, otherwise you feel empty. And then both Ihsan and Muhammad shared in their stories the sense of having to answer questions, having to defend, having to explain what Ashura really is, why we pray a certain way. So as you think about that dynamic, being on different ends of that dynamic, what comes up for you? What does it feel like to you? I'll first would like to hear from Ihsan and Muhammad. What does it feel like to you to be in that position of having to explain?
Honestly, from my point of view, I feel like it mostly stems from, the reasoning is we're the minority. The Shias are the minority of Muslims in America. And when you usually go to a mosque, that mosque is a Sunni mosque. When you talk to Muslims, even fellow Muslims, most of my Muslim friends are Sunni because the Muslims I meet on campus, just anywhere, they're usually Sunni, and rarely do I ever meet, somebody who's Shia. So I feel like that's why we're always answering the questions, because there's not much known about us. We kind of always have to answer these questions because people are like, oh, I've heard this about Shias. Is this true? I've heard this about Shias. Is this true? And that happens when you're a minority because it's easier for people to speak for you rather than you speaking for yourself. And I feel like it's actually helped me in a way because it's forced me to have a sense of preparedness. It's forced me to understand my religion better because now I need to be prepared if somebody's asking me a question. I can't be like, oh, I don't know, let me go find the answer for you. Or, oh, I think it's this. I have to be like, no, the answer to this is this. This is why we do this. This is why we believe this, because I'm constantly having to answer those questions.
No, definitely. That resonated with me as well. In that we are surrounded by the majority, and that, any masjid you go into is, very likely to be Sunni. But at the same time, knowing that we're on the other side and knowing our own beliefs, I feel like we're meant to stand for the oppressed already, right? And, right now the minority is oppressed more than ever in its representation, I would say. And like Muhammad said, it allows stereotypes to run rampant on both sides because we don't interact or because we don't make these efforts to learn. So then we can just keep our own ideas, and then the ideas never collide so that they can never be dissected from the truth and the lies. So definitely it feels like we, both Sunnis and Shias, from the perspective of a Shia interacting with the Sunni, both of them all of a sudden have to like gather all the knowledge of Islam ever and like try and put it together to formulate how they come together. But I think it's more of a, hey, how do I get this person to understand me?
I don't know if this will feel true to you, Ihsan and Muhammad, or not, but in one of my conversations with Shias and Sunnis, something that really hit me hard was when one of my Shia friends said, it's like we're a double minority. When we are outside in non-Muslim spaces, we have to explain why I'm Muslim, Islam is not, violent, this and that. And when I'm in the Muslim space, I still have to explain why I'm this kind of Muslim or why I believe this or that historical narrative. And to me, sitting there listening to her was my first time realizing like, oh, wow, it would feel heavy to me, and even frustrating to have to always be in that space of having to explain and justify and not feeling home, even when you're home, kind of a feeling. But that's just me. Feel free to add to that. Otherwise, I'll move on to Adib and Ariba if you have any reflections on what you just heard.
I mean, just one thing to add to that. I feel like it's less of a feeling of frustration, and it's almost given me a privileged position, because as weird as it is, being a minority has given me a privilege, because I used to hate it so much because it made me different than everybody else. But now I understood that it's opened doors and given me a platform, because now when I speak, people want to listen. You know, people come to me. A lot of my Sunni friends come to me as their one sole Shia friend. You know, as the authority on all things Shia, because they don't have anybody else to talk to about it. So it makes me a better person, because, and it's strengthened my faith in a way, because I've had to make sure that I'm firm in my faith, and I've had to make sure that I understand my own faith, and that my faith isn't just, oh, my parents are Shia, so I'm Shia. No, it's forced me to be a better Shia and a better Muslim, because people come to me and ask me these questions. So I have to be, if I'm not from my own faith, I can't spread that to other people.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Muhammad. And I'm so happy it's not frustrating. Yay. And that's a beautiful thought, to recognize your privilege, even, you know, in a minority kind of a state where it could not be, where it could be the opposite. Adib, Ariba, anything coming up for you as you hear this conversation? How does it feel?
I'd say for me, because, you know, I started out by saying it was already tough being a Muslim youth in America. And you saying that, like, for them, they had to defend themselves, you know, obviously as Muslims in America, like why we're Muslim, but also like why, you know, Shia Muslims, it already in the very beginning, like, I don't want my future kids or the future to feel what I felt in that emptiness. So knowing like how the other side feels, it's like, I want to go even further to not have anybody have that feeling, because Islam is so true and so beautiful. This really like pushes me, at least, you know, the beautiful thing about being aware now is that in the future, when I raise my kids, when I, give knowledge to people, whatever it may be that Allah puts me in life, I'm able to have, because I have the open heart and mind, to give that others as well. So, you know, at least a number of people who are feeling like they're double stuck don't feel that way, you know, to kind of keep the generational line of having an open heart, you know, exceed, you know, because we make the change now, but we can definitely make it better in the future. So it just makes me hopeful that we nurture love and hope and, like, you know, what's really important to us.
Yay for hope. Awesome. Do you have any questions for each other? Because otherwise I have more. Anything you'd like to have each other elaborate on, or maybe something from the other story that surprised you and you'd like to hear more on that, or challenged you and you want to hear more on that?
I want to say I was very shocked at how Adib was so quick to accept Muhammad's truth, you know, like in his telling of what is representative of his faith, you know, he was very quick to understand and be like, okay, well, I hear you, you know, and take that down as well, because that's, I think, the sole reason which something like that was allowed to be posted is because maybe the other people didn't have a Shia they could speak to. So it just really resonated with me knowing that, you know, thankfully he had a friend or something, but also that I don't know, that more people can realize stuff like this. Yeah.
And, you know, like you saying that made me just realize that, like, let's say that Muhammad and I weren't friends and I had just posted it and someone random told me that, I would have been like, I would have possibly just passed. I was like, oh, okay. But it really shows that because we were friends, because we had that community, we were close like that. He informed me this with love, with that already connectiveness, and how I was able to accept it. Like, that shows you literally the answer to it is cultivating that love and that kindness and that connectivity, which is more important. to realize that and have that open space. So like thank you for like just realizing that right now, like really it shows you like how important being connected and having similar things in common.
And since we're talking about you, Muhammad, how was it for you on the other end, having to make this intervention?
To be honest, I wasn't gonna say anything in the beginning, because I saw the post and I was like, I should say something, but also at the same time, I was like, look, I'm the only Shia kid on a board of Sunni kids. Like, who am I to be imposing what I believe, you know? But then I think my cousin texted me, and my cousin was the former president before me, and then I became the president after him. But he kind of just told me, he was like, dude, I think you should say something. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'll say something, but I won't be pushy with it. I'll just say it, and if it goes through, it goes through. If it doesn't, then that's okay. And I said what needed to be said. So I talked to Adib about it, and I mean, Adib was way more accepting than I thought he was going to be. You know, like I just thought he was going to be like, oh, okay, cool. Like let's just like basically put down the post, take down the post, put up another post, and that's it. But he wanted to learn more. You know, he asked me for videos explaining Ashura, you know, people reading the Maqtal, which is basically kind of reading what happened on the day of Ashura, the history of what happened on the day of Ashura. And he really asked for those things, and he wanted to learn more. And that made me really happy, because it's always nice to see somebody who is interested in the things that you believe in, you know, because like Hassan said, he could have just turned around and been like, whatever, you know, or like he could have just ignored it. But because he accepted it, it made it that much better, and it made it such an amazing learning moment for both of us.
I have two questions, curious questions. One, Mohammed, was it just an automatic for you that I'll tell Adib and see what he thinks, or was there a little bit more like, oh, who should I tell? I'll tell Adib, like.
I believe Adib at the time was my vice president. So me and him were already very close. Me and Adib were already close friends before that. And I believe he was the one in charge of the social media. So I just went to him instinctively. And us being close friends, it was very easy to talk to him. And I feel like that made us even closer as friends after that conversation, because we had been friends, but like we weren't really like super, super close. And we were able to have, after that, philosophical discussions and Islamic discussions, and just talk about that, because we both knew that we were open and learning about each other.
Awesome. Thank you. I was curious because, you know, I think I'm hearing all of you talk about how different it is to have these conversations with people that you already are close to, that you already have that sense of connection with. And it's much harder to approach strangers or to approach someone who's just at the hierarchy and you don't have that established. So it just shows that we really need to be coming together and really have more friends, be friends with one another. I have one more question, and then we'll start wrapping up. Since you all are college students and you're all leaders in your own rights, anything that you would like to share on the school scene, on the college scene, right? Like, what is it, something that you observe, and or like, what are the dynamics like, the Shia Sunni dynamic in your own personal experience? And do you have any sense of this is what we need moving forward?
I just wanted to say yes right off the bat. Being someone who works with MSAs across the West Coast, so I already have to know what these MSAs are doing, who's attending their MSAs, what subjects they're bringing up. You know, all these things are really important to the Muslim students on campus, like really the core of Muslim college students. You always find like, on campuses, it's really common to see like Shias aren't interacting with their MSAs, and MSAs shouldn't be reluctant to be just strictly for Sunni or strictly for Shia. It's supposed to be like this open space, and so you are finding like some of these MSAs, and some of them actually do a beautiful job at, you know, nurturing both, like mashallah. But there is work to be done. Like there is a better way to better handle and, you know, like create certain things that you can find in Sorry My Brothers Are Knocking the Door. But yeah, there are issues and ways I want to fix that. It's like, you know, be inclusive already. We're like in general, you know, people want to learn about Islam, you should be open to that in any side or aspect. No one should be left out for, any specific reason. That's why I was thankful to be in the same boat as Muhammad, two different sects, but we're still able to handle and lead an MSA. Like, alhamdulillah.
So I was the founding member of the MSA at my community college, at Mount San Antonio College, or one of the founding members. And I was on the board for both years, last year and this year. But I always saw that at the MSA, and I mean, it was kind of maybe just with our MSA because we were really new, we never really asked, are you Sunni? Are you Shia? Because when you walked in that room, we were all Muslims. And we weren't at the point where we were having like Friday prayers or anything like that. So it wasn't very apparent what sect you were from. And it was kind of just like when you walked in the room, everybody was Muslim and everybody was friends, and now seeing hijabis on campus, because whenever I'm on campus, I see so many hijabis and it makes me so happy because I'm like, wow, the Muslim community is growing, and I mean, by the day, I'll see 40, 50, 60 hijabis as I'm just randomly walking around campus, and it's like, obviously when it's a guy Muslim, it's kind of hard to differentiate because like, okay, I don't know if you're Muslim or not by just like looking at you. But when you see a hijab, you're like, wow, that person's a Muslim. And it makes you really happy because you just see so many Muslims on campus and you just see the Muslim community growing. And it's kind of like, I feel like when you reach college, a lot of people just drop their sects. You're not Shia, you're not Sunni. You're kind of just, everybody's friends with everybody. If you're Muslim, I'm cool with you. But unfortunately, I feel like we do see in some MSAs where, like Adib said, Shias are excluded or Sunnis are excluded depending on who's on the board of the MSA. And a lot of like ideas are not taken into account because people would just want to stay within their roots and they don't want to be acceptant of anything new because they're afraid of anything new. They're afraid of change.
All right, so I'm mindful of time. I'm gonna leave us with one more question. Feel free to respond to that question in the chat, and or actually our storytellers, feel free to respond to it as well, because in the chat, I'm going to enter a survey question. This is our very first time holding an event like this. So please take a moment to fill out that survey, attendees. Give us your feedback so we know how to keep improving and bringing programming and initiatives that will actually help us come together as a community, so we can have the conversations our four storytellers have now because they have those connections. So I think that's really my primary intention, is how do we, on an ongoing basis in different, be it on college campus, be it inside our mosques, different aspects of community, how can we build these relationships so we feel comfortable having the conversations? We feel comfortable asking the questions, where people like Muhammad feel privileged and empowered to answer the questions versus, frustrated because someone's attacking you. And it goes both ways, of course. So awesome. So as folks are filling out their surveys, please do. The question that I would like to leave us with is, I hear you. It doesn't matter if you're Shia or Sunni at the end of the day, you're Muslim when you walk through that door. And in the beginning, we saw quite a few people still said, like, on the scale, they were high on their sectarian values, right? Like that it matters. So is there anything that you can do, or any thoughts you have on that? Like, how do we hold on to that unity, honor the unity, where we're just one ummah, while still acknowledging, embracing, and navigating through the differences that are there, which I think make us a stronger community, versus a divided community. So any thoughts on that? How to find that balance? Did that make sense? The question, it's a big question.
Sorry, I've been talking a lot recently, but I kind of just feel like I find that balance in the same way I find the balance with my race identity, right? I'm Arab, I'm Iraqi, and I'm proud to be Arab and Iraqi. but that doesn't mean I hate Iranians, or that doesn't mean I hate Pakistanis, or that doesn't mean I hate anybody else. Just because I'm proud of my identity doesn't mean that I have to put down somebody else's identity just because I'm proud of my own identity. In that same way, I'm Shia and I'm proud to be Shia, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to be putting down my Sunni friends or any of my other friends just because they're not Shia. And I kind of just feel like that's the way I find my balance.
Any final thoughts from our storytellers on this question or in general?
What Muhammad really said resonated with me as well. It's true, we already have gone past so many sectarian beliefs, you know, before this country was split so badly, but now we can all come together. So if we're, you know, setting ourselves back within our own faith, you know, like we're not contributing to the progression of not only this country, humanity, but like ourselves, you know. So just knowing that we can't limit ourselves, and at the very least hearing each other out is a requirement.
Last call, no pressures. Adib, Ariba, if you have anything to say. If not, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Heart reactions, applause reactions, all kinds of reactions. I'm sure if our participants could, they would be giving all those reactions. So thank you. Attendees, thank you for being here. IslamiCity, SMC, thank you for organizing and hosting. To wrap us up, I have a special question and request of, I think, Muhammad and Adib, but someone wanted to know when Mount SAC MSA will be back up. So feel free to enter that in the chat. And everybody else, before you head out, please be sure to fill out the survey. And in the chat, one final question for you. What is something that you're taking away from this event? A word, a feeling, a phrase? Please enter in the chat something you're taking away from tonight's event. But with that, I'll call it a night. If any Brother Leem or Ayaz want to say something, please do. Otherwise, thank you. Deeply grateful.